Hello and welcome back. This is part 4 for our Neurodiversity Celebration week. Well done if you've stuck with us this far. You've got myself, Sarah, and Cassie again. And this episode, we thought we would talk about masking, what it is, why we do it, and the fact that it can look different for lots of different people. And what the consequences are when we go behind the mask or drop the mask, because it can be different for every single person. I can't pretend to know what somebody else's mask is because it's unique to them. I do know what I'm still kind of piecing together what mine looks like and when it kicks in. And I think this is one of the challenges, right, with when you're late diagnosed. We mentioned in a couple of episodes ago about untangling those different parts of ourselves. It can be really quite tricky when you've been masking for such a long time to actually recognize when the masking is kicking in. So this is almost like connecting back to that episode that we did all around identity, but also kind of leading us forward into why we mask and how it can show up.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like it's going to be a really meaty episode. Oh
Mm.
my goodness me. There's so much around this. And it's one of those things, Sarah, that, I guess like you, it's not until you start to kind of untangle things and you notice things and inquire into them that you begin to realize actually what lies underneath or behind the mask, however we want to
Yeah.
phrase it. So I'm really curious because, you have coached hundreds of people who are neurodiverse.
Yeah.
What would you say? I mean, I know everybody's very different, not difficult. Everybody is very different. What would you say are the typical kind of situations where you found your clients have been masking? Might just help some of our listeners understand a little bit more about masking and what we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few different things I would say. So with younger clients earlier on in their journey, this quite often shows up in college, university, where I think smaller children, younger children, when they're in primary school, are a lot more forgiving. They just kind of accept and they play or they don't play. And, it's not so much of this parallel play is kind of acceptable in those kind of scenarios. When we go into secondary school and college and university, people are almost less accepting and less forgiving because they think you should have grown out of certain behaviors. And that's when the masking starts to kick in more strongly. Because if you've got, say, for example, you say what you think, you've got zero filter. I think people are a lot more forgiving when you've got younger children because they might not understand the social construct. So they're like, oh, oops, we don't say that, we don't do this. When you've got, say, a 16-year-old saying it, it can be portrayed as he's got a really bad attitude. She's just, a bitch, or crikey, like they're quite assertive or aggressive. And it can be quite often misconstrued as that or misinterpreted. But young people, especially teenagers, are very unforgiving. So if you have a scenario like that, where maybe you've said something, somebody's taken offense or it's kicked off, you then start learning that, that's not okay. So then you kind of stop yourself. You learn to go, actually, that's not okay. I'm not okay to say that, or I'm not okay to think this or be like that. So you start kind of making tweaks. You start watching what other people do. It's like, I need to be more like them, or I need to be more like that to be in that group. So that's when the masking starts to appear. And how this can then develop as we get older and we move into the workplace, this is where I see a lot of my late diagnosed adults are chronic people pleasers. They are so afraid to say no. They are so afraid to speak up if they see something playing out that is wrong, or even if they know unequivocally that they're right. In extreme cases, they won't speak up, they won't say anything because they've got this fear of being called rude or abrupt, or like it's all of that kind of childhood trauma, I guess, or those bad experiences in the past that will stop them. So they just have a front up. For me personally, I've had scenarios where people have treated me and spoken to me really badly, and I've been bullied in the workplace. But I guess like the masking is so tightly connected to rejection sensitivity as well, I think, and just trying to survive. You accept the bad behaviour. You get yourself into difficult positions, not meaning to. And sometimes we can't hold the mask. So therefore you might have what gets construed as a tantrum or a meltdown, or you start crying in a meeting because you literally can't, you're at the edge and you can't hold it together. And in those scenarios, what I would say probably about 90% of my autistic clients in particular, rather than deal with it, they would leave, they'd find another job because it's too hard. And they fear the judgment, I suppose, of themselves, that they'd rather actually just remove themselves from the situation and then start again. So that's what I see a lot. It's not even imposter syndrome. It's not even that, really. It's just suppressing emotions, not identifying needs. So even if they're in a scenario, for example, or a work situation where their needs, or they can't cope with something, or they're struggling with something, they won't ask for help because that's part of the mask. Because if they ask for help, then that is deemed as a weakness, and they can't possibly have people thinking that they can't do their job or they're not capable. So they'd rather just try and battle through. And this is where the mask side of things is so detrimental, because this is where holding up that mask, trying to pretend that everything is okay constantly, it's not sustainable. And that's where you head towards burnout.
Wow. There's so much in what you just said that really resonates as well. You know, you're just reminding me of a time when I worked in an organisation. Gosh, we are going back. I must have been about 21. And I'd had a recent promotion in the HR team at this place. It was a really big organisation. And in this team that I was in, I was lucky. I was working in a really lovely team. I didn't know about, masking. I didn't even know or understand my struggles. I didn't even recognise I had some struggles and some challenges. What I do remember is a project that I'd been given the opportunity to work on, and it was just one for me to work on my own and to get done by a particular deadline. I struggled so much. I couldn't ask for help. It was like, the total of what you were saying there about pretending everything's okay when it's not. And it was a really big scenario like that. I couldn't break the project down into little pieces enough to then be able to focus on it to get it done. And in the end, it was awful, because I think the worst thing that could have happened, well, not quite, but at the time it felt like that, did happen. The project got taken off me and given to somebody else. And so, of course, that then said, probably the rejection sensitivity of, I'm not good enough. I need to escape this and go and get another job somewhere else.
I think that's the thing. It carries with it almost like this constant fear that someone's going to work out who you are. And you've already developed this idea that actually who you really are is not likable, not trustworthy, not reliable, whatever it is that your traits or your quirks are, like not capable, whatever it is. You live in this constant fear that somebody's going to find you out. somebody's actually going to figure out who you really are, and then you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think half the challenge actually when it comes to being in the workplace is if somebody doesn't understand or doesn't see where and how they may be masking or pretending everything's okay when it's not, numbing things out, suppressing things down, pushing them down, pretending everything's okay, etc., is that if they then are offered help because they don't see it, they're not going to be able to address it. And I think this is perhaps where you may have some people who end up on performance improvement plans
Yes.
unnecessarily.
Okay.
Have you found this with the clients that you've worked with?
So many are on performance management plans that are not performing well. And when it kind of gets down to it and we start sort of talking about what those things are, it's where, I don't know, unfortunately, by the time they come to me because they've been made to come to coaching for whatever reason through their performance management plan, it's not too far gone. In most cases, we can work through some scenarios, come up with, like, actually identify what the challenges are, develop some coping strategies, and identify what their needs are. This is one of the big problems, I think, when you're so used to suppressing emotions, thoughts, ideas, like trying to not blurt things out because, if we've got justice sensitivity, like when you're aware that you have these challenges and you're trying to contain it all in because, I can't tell that person that he's an idiot and I think he's a complete waste of space because, that's my boss, or he's completely incompetent. That's not kind of acceptable. Or I have frustrations because I can see what's going to go wrong, but they're not listening to me and I just keep getting accused of bringing problems. That's a really common thing. Like, you're so negative. It's like, no, but I can see where the possible pitfalls are. And actually, if we address them, because I can see the big picture, if we address them now, then we're going to save time further down the road. The amount of particularly autistic clients I have, it's like, I told them this was going to happen. But at the time, I didn't listen. And now we've just wasted all this time. And that's where the justice sensitivity comes in, because they're like, well, now you're going to make me redo everything, even though if you'd have done it my way in the first place, we wouldn't be here right now. So they have that, but because they don't necessarily communicate in a way that sometimes their neurotypical line manager can receive, it's not always received in a particularly good way. So they're the ones that become a problem. There is a very high number on performance management. I think in that, though, quite often they're not on performance management lightly. It's obviously kind of spiraled downwards potentially. But that's, by the time that gets noticed, obviously things are pretty bad by that point. Yeah. And in that scenario, the neurodivergent individual doesn't know how to rescue it. They don't know how to bring it back. And they feel like, again, going back to the not being able to ask for help, sometimes they don't even know what help they need. So actually they can't ask for help because they don't know what they need. And this, again, comes down to when you're suppressing emotions and just trying to survive, their own individual needs don't even come in. So they're so used to just bypassing that if they do ask for help and somebody says, like, what do you need? I'm like, oh, shit, I don't know. Because also that's putting them on the spot. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. Because they're looking to survive all the time. And this was, I've got a client that I was working with last year, and one of the first few sessions that we did some work on identifying emotions, because they're in their late 40s, late diagnosed, but I think was on the journey for quite a while, recognised there's a lot of neurodivergence in their family. But we did a good couple of sessions. After the first session, so we did the first session looking at I'm sure some people are familiar with the emotions wheel.
Yeah.
There is actually a neurodivergent emotions wheel for anybody that's interested in, and I can probably share this in the show notes. But it's a graphic developed by, I think her name is Lindsay Bramman. Yeah, Lindsay Bramman. So I need to credit her with that. But she's basically created her own version of the emotions wheel, but a neurodivergent version, because quite often my neurodivergent individuals don't know what, like the word attached to the emotion doesn't necessarily mean anything. So what this neurodivergent emotions wheel is, it identifies, first of all, something physical. So I don't know, maybe they get really hot, or maybe they notice that they're clenching their jaw, or their gut is churning, or they're crying, or they feel really tired. What it does is that physical sensation, which they can actually feel or notice, gets connected to a feeling, and then it gets broken down into like 6 core emotions. So it helps them identify it, like, oh, I feel really fidgety, or I feel like I'm feeling really tappy, like my foot's tapping. Okay, so what's triggering that? And then there's a selection of words. So it could be feeling embarrassed, it could be feeling anxious, it could be feeling scared. And then all of those kind of filter into the word fear, for example. Now, this isn't an exact given, because some people might have those emotions. And I know we've talked about this before. When I was younger, I used to feel really frustrated, but that frustration would come out as tears. So people would think that I am upset, but actually for me, it wasn't that. It was more angry and frustrated, but I didn't know how to express it in a healthy way, I guess.
Yeah.
It came out as just tears. So sometimes even those emotions get kind of mixed up in how we outwardly express them versus how we feel inside.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a neurodivergent person, this really is very much about just starting to notice
Yeah.
things, noticing feelings, noticing bodily senses and reactions, and being able to maybe inquire into those, whether it be with your coach, if
Yeah.
you've got a coach, or a trusted friend who
Yeah.
actually understands and gets this, can be incredibly helpful, really helpful to just start to untangle and just start to make note of, in areas where maybe you need a little bit of help or a bit of assistance.
Yeah.
And remember that, what, it's actually okay.
Yeah.
As human beings, it's good to ask for help. It's
Do you
not a
know what's
bad
funny
thing.
though? And I don't know if you will connect with this. I constantly, even in my high stress job, it was almost like an accolade. They're like, oh my God, you're always so calm. You're always so chilled. And I'm like, inside, I definitely do not feel like that. So I am the archetypal swan, but I almost wore it like a badge.
Mm,
I'm unflappable. Inside, it's utter turmoil, but I got so good at masking that turmoil that I never give anything away. So, and what I have become aware of as I've gotten older is that, and this is almost a bit frustrating, like when I actually ask for help, because I've already reached that breaking point.
yeah.
So when then I don't get the help that I need, that's when it's like a full blown crash. And this is what I think people don't always understand. Like, it's so hard. You don't understand how much effort I've put into this before I even come to you to ask for help. And I was in a work situation before at an organization when I did bring forward something that I was finding challenging. And the response that my line manager at the time said is like, you need to stop coming to me with problems. You need to bring solutions. And I was like, I didn't know what to do with that. And it was like a proper sucker punch. And it's like, have honestly tried to work through. And I didn't obviously advocate for myself at the time because I was like, okay, there is no help. And I think that manager at the time, I want to believe that they were trying to develop me.
Mm.
But because they didn't understand me, and I wasn't, obviously, I didn't know I was neurodivergent at the time. I can now retrospectively identify what was going on. Yeah, it was, I never went and asked for help again, which then led to massive burnout and actually in hospital for me. But that was the extreme.
Wow. So clearly you learn through experience that it's not safe to ask for help, or
Yes.
it's safe to to bring things forward, to discuss, to talk through.
But then it comes down to that psychological safety. If
Yeah.
And I know that there'll be many, many neurodivergent individuals listening to this who are like, yeah, but I don't, like my line manager doesn't know about my neurodivergence. I don't want to disclose it at work. And I completely understand that as well,
Yeah.
because this is where psychological safety comes into play.
Yeah, it's really, really, really important. And I think this is where it's kind of essential, it's critical actually, that individuals really get to learn and understand who they are, how they are at their best,
Yeah.
how they are under pressure or in tension or a conflict, or when they're tired or when they haven't been meeting their own basic human needs,
Yeah.
when their needs in the workplace, support needs are not being met. When we can understand and we've got a good understanding of how we work and how we operate, it makes it much easier to be able to advocate.
Yeah.
Much easier. And also, I think, coming from an understanding that you're not broken. And I know we spoke about this in one of an earlier episodes that, you know, because your brain works differently doesn't mean you're broken.
Yeah.
It just means that your brain works differently.
Yes.
And being in flow and being able to create flow for yourself is different to the next person and the next person and the next person.
Yeah.
And so I think this is where organizations can really help people without needing to hone in on one individual who may have openly said, oh, I am neurodivergent. Because there's a whole host of people who haven't openly said they're
Yeah.
neurodivergent. We're actually having some kind of team dynamics or being able to help all individuals in a team know themselves and a line manager know their team members and their team member knowing how to communicate best with the line
Yeah.
manager. And all of that can actually put a lot of stress, headache, tension, struggle and challenge to one side
Yeah.
and
I mean,
create a
that's
much
huge.
better environment.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. And one of the things that I do with my coaching clients is I support them to create their own user guide, like so how to get the best out of them. So we talk about what their sensory needs are, like what their working environment, what their preferences are, their communication style, how they like to receive feedback. Because actually doing that work and helping them identify that, they can then communicate that more effectively to their line manager. And they've initially some of them been a bit like nervous about sort of sharing this information. But so far, and like you said, I've coached hundreds of neurodivergent people, which kind of weirds me out a little bit. But I would say probably about 95% of them, those user guides have been received really positively. And the managers have been really grateful and gone, actually, this is really helpful. It would be great if the rest of the team could do this.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking that.
It makes their job much easier, right? And this is where
Does.
it doesn't have to be a difficult thing. It's just understanding and accepting that the person is an individual and we all have individual needs and preferences. And one size does not fit all, especially when you're managing a team.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I found that I've worked with a lot of teams over the years, helping them with their team dynamics, doing different profiling, using different
Yeah.
profiling. And, whether somebody is neurodivergent or not, it has helped every single person in the team with their confidence, with gaining clarity over
Mm.
themselves, with understanding work colleagues,
Yeah.
even getting their head around with, situations like, that's why we've been clashing.
Yeah.
We've been clashing because we're complete opposites. And whenever I present something to you and you tell me and pick all the problems out of it, that's actually the brilliant contribution that you can bring to any project, that before I go and present it to the client, I can share it with you. You can show me all the bits that I've missed because I don't have an eye for detail and my head's in the clouds and I'm better at strategy than, you know, process. That actually this is where we can work together
Yeah.
and appreciate each other's skills. And when you create that in a team and between colleagues, everything changes because all of a sudden the team becomes in flow
Yeah.
because each individual is allowed to be in flow.
Yeah.
And, it's really great fun and it's really very rewarding for everybody to be able to experience that.
Yeah. This comes down to that acceptance thing though, isn't it? And understanding,
Mm.
going back to compassion. I know we've mentioned the word compassion a lot in the previous episode, but I remember I listened to a neurodiversity workshop. It was a neurodiversity awareness workshop a few years ago now. But I know this kind of analogy, I love an analogy, right? It kind of helps illustrate things, and I see things in a very visual way. But the illustration was, we had like a room, and in that room, it's a room full of 10 Windows PCs. They're all running on Windows 10 or 11, whatever version it is. And then you've got a Mac running iOS in the corner. And you've got all of these systems running, but the Mac is really good at this thing, but the Windows like runs this thing. What do you do? And there was a few people like, well, you just get rid of the Mac, don't you? And convert it to a PC. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. Because when they were looking at computers, that's what they saw. And it's like, but what if you, turn that into a person? Like the iOS Macs are known for good graphics. They're like the creative's favorite. They are capable of other things. They're not wrong and they're not bad, but some people don't know how to operate Mac. Whereas some people are massive advocates for the Microsoft Office and Windows and they love that. I'm sitting here recording this on a Mac. My husband is massively anti-Mac. He's got a PC downstairs. We've had to find systems that work across both. And when they described this, they were like, oh, now it makes sense.
I love that. What a brilliant metaphor, because it resonates so wildly with me. It really does. I've been using Macs for, well over 10 years.
Yeah.
And there's a client I've been doing some work with recently who are all on the Windows system. And it's like, oh my goodness me.
It's a different language.
I can't use this laptop. Everything about it is just alien to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because just in that, so it's the same with our mobile phones. Like I've got an iPhone. I love the Apple iPhone. And this is not an advert for iPhone, by the way, but my husband hates them. He prefers his Android, but we have to operate a family calendar. So the way we compromised and the way we, whether you love them or hate them or not, the Google Calendar works across both systems. So we found a way that we can both have our own preferences met, and we found a system that works for both of us.
Amazing.
And that's the same as what we're asking employers to do. Like, one employee is not better than the other necessarily. They don't have a better way of communicating or a better way of managing things. They just manage them differently. What your job is as the organisation is to make sure that both of them operate at the best that they can in the same environment.
Absolutely, definitely. And so there's a key thing there is a willingness to learn,
Yeah.
to naturally want to seek to understand, how does this wonderful human being work?
Yeah.
How can we help you work and operate at your very best in a way that keeps your well-being full,
Yeah.
your well-being tank full
Yeah.
and vibrant and not depleted in any sense of the imagination.
And to accept that you're going to get things wrong, right? But own it. It's okay. Like, no one is you're not going to get shot down by flames, or that, I still make mistakes and I've got a neurodivergent family and I still mess things up, right? Great example. I did it today. I made a joke. It was the end of the school day. I made a joke with my youngest. It massively backfired because I thought I was being funny. And possibly at the front end of the day, before he'd been all day in school, he would have found it funny too. But this is, and I have to say, I could say, oh my God, don't be so ridiculous, don't be so sensitive. Instead, it's like, oh, do you know what? I read that situation wrong and I hold my hands up and I'm sorry. I thought it was funny. It's not funny. I own that and I accept it. It's not for me to criticize him for how he feels or how he responds, because otherwise that's invalidating how he feels. And that's how we learn that our feelings are not important or they're wrong. So I'm trying to actively encourage him not to mask up. I don't want him to mask up. I want him to feel safe. And that's actually one important step, I think, in creating that psychological safety, is validating, understanding, showing compassion. And just to kind of circle it back a little bit, I had a co-coaching session a few months ago where the manager had said, like, this is a brand new scenario for me. I've never managed someone neurodivergent. And we had to correct them to say, actually, you've never knowingly managed somebody neurodivergent. Because statistically, if you've been a manager for 20 years, 1 in 4, I think, of individuals are neurodivergent. So if you have a team of 4 people, the chances are one of them has some form of neurodivergence that falls under that massive neurodivergent umbrella.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. It's huge, isn't it, really? And I think this really just shows how important it is for, I guess, people to be informed, or they don't need to know everything.
No.
And maybe it just goes back to the simplicity of human beings being present with another human being.
Yeah.
Without an agenda, without strings attached, but actually being willing to, like, put your sword and your shield down, and I don't know, whatever it is, your building blocks, and just actually sit and be with the human being in front of you and listen.
Yeah.
And ask questions and listen and show understanding and compassion. If you don't understand, seek to understand. Ask to be helped. Help me understand.
Yeah.
Because I think anybody who is sat with somebody who's open, and so they're feeling heard, they're feeling seen, they will open up and they will share more. And what a beautiful place then to start, creating a better environment to work with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know anybody that wants to be miserable.
No, gosh, no, not at all.
We all,
Crikey.
we deserve to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel safe and happy. And when we have all of those things, we know from a neuroscientific point of view, we know from a nervous system point of view, when we feel all of those things, we have better regulation. We can access that prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain. So we do our best work, we do our best learning, we do our best problem solving when we're in that state.
Absolutely. Performance goes up, communication goes up, productivity goes up, intelligence goes up.
Yeah.
You know, there's there's so many plus points, aren't there, to an organization actually taking the time to really understand their people.
100%.
Yeah. Wow. God, it's been a great conversation. There's so much more actually that I'd love to cover and talk about.
Oh, I'm sure we will cover some more. We've still got one more episode to do, and
Brilliant.
I think we're going to focus on communication next time. So that's going to be an interesting conversation in itself.
Definitely will be. I think it's going to be another meaty one. Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.